I never thought my past as a Navy SEAL would ever matter in a quiet, suburban neighborhood. But one afternoon that past came roaring back in the most brutal way imaginable. 3 men dressed like tactical officers stormed onto my property, pretending to be HOA enforcers, and one of them made the biggest mistake of his life. He laid a hand on my wife, Sarah. By the end of that day, their faces didn't look anything like when they arrived. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. It all started that morning when Sarah went outside to water the garden. She noticed a black SUV creeping past our house again and again, 3 slow laps around the block before it parked across the street. 3 men stepped out, dressed in black tactical vests with fake police patches glinting in the sun. At first glance, they looked official. But Sarah has good instincts. The belts were flimsy nylon with toy-grade holsters, and none of them carried radios. Real cops always communicate. The tallest one marched toward our yard. "Ma'am, HOA inspection," he barked, flashing a badge that looked like it came from a Halloween costume. Sarah didn't even flinch. "Since when does the HOA hire armed officers?" she asked calmly. One of the men smirked. "We're not hired, lady." "We are the law here," Sarah told them to leave immediately, reminding them that trespassing is illegal. But the third man stepped closer, his hand on the fake baton at his side. When she lifted her phone to record, he slapped it from her hand. And then, to my horror, slapped her. That's when I stepped out of the garage. I'd been sorting old gear when I heard her shout. My pulse snapped into combat focus. There she was, holding her cheek, and 3 cowards pretending to be cops standing over her. I walked straight toward them. My voice was calm, but the tone made all 3 hesitate. "You boys picked the wrong house," I said. "You've got 5 seconds to tell me who sent you." The tall one squared his shoulders. "The HOA president told us you've been ignoring notices. We're here to enforce compliance." He tried to stare me down, but after years of facing people far worse than him, I wasn't impressed. I told Sarah to go inside and lock the door. She didn't argue. She knew what that tone meant. I stepped forward, low and steady. "Touch my wife again, and you won't walk out of here." Their smirks faltered. I demanded identification, but they refused. And right then, I knew. They weren't just trespassing. They were impersonating officers, a federal crime. I planted my feet, squared my stance, eyes locked. The switch had flipped. The tallest one jabbed a finger toward me. "You think you can ignore HOA rules? Your truck, your fence, your dogs, all violations." I gave a dark laugh. "My truck's legal, my fence is city approved, and those dogs are service animals protected under the ADA. You're on my property impersonating law enforcement. That's 10 years in prison if you're lucky." One of them tried to bluff. "You can't threaten us. We'll cuff you right now." He reached for the toy cuffs on his belt. That was his mistake. I moved fast. My left hand caught his wrist, twisted, and the cuffs hit the grass. My right elbow followed through, precise, controlled, and his knees buckled. The second one lunged, swinging his baton. I sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and used his own momentum to flip him over my shoulder. He hit the pavement hard, groaning. The leader froze. "You're assaulting officers!" he shouted. "No," I said, stepping in close. "I'm stopping criminals from attacking my wife." Sarah reappeared in the doorway, filming. "Already called the sheriff," she shouted. "They're on their way." The leader panicked and bolted for the SUV, but I grabbed the back of his vest, yanked him off balance, and pinned him against the hood. He had no fight left, just fear. When the real deputies arrived, 2 fakes were down, and the third was pinned under my knee. The deputies swarmed in fast, lights flashing, radios alive, and neighbors peering from behind fences. I raised my hands, stepping back from the man I had pinned to the SUV. The 3 imposters were no longer so bold. Their faces were pale, their cheap vests torn, and their fake badges glinted weakly in the sunlight. Sarah stood a few feet behind me, holding her phone steady, voice firm despite the shaking in her hands. "These are the men who hit me," she told the deputies. They said they were with the HOA police. One deputy approached carefully. "Sir, can you tell us what happened?" I explained everything, how they showed up pretending to be officers, assaulted my wife, and refused to identify themselves. He took one look at the patches and shook his head. "Yeah, these aren't real," he muttered. Within minutes, the 3 men were cuffed and sitting on the curb, silent and humiliated. As the patrol cars pulled away, Sarah leaned against me, finally letting out the breath she'd been holding. "They could have done worse," she whispered. "Not anymore," I said. "It's over." Or so I thought. At the sheriff's station, the imposters looked pathetic, faces swollen, pride shattered. Under bright lights, their story fell apart. The ringleader cracked first, admitting that the HOA president, Karen Ellis, had paid them to teach us a lesson. She wanted to scare us into submission, make an example of the veteran who didn't bow to her rules. The sheriff, a gruff man with 20 years on the force, turned to me. "You want to press charges?" "Everyone available," I said without hesitation. But Karen wasn't done. That same night, a courier delivered an envelope to my door. She had filed a lawsuit claiming I had used excessive force and damaged the HOA's reputation. She even called her hired criminals licensed security contractors. My attorney Cole, a friend from my Navy days, nearly laughed when he read it. "This woman just handed you a win," he said. "We'll counter for harassment, assault, and conspiracy. You've got video proof, witnesses, and police reports." She's finished court came 2 weeks later. The room was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even a few HOA members pretending they hadn't been part of Karen's empire. She sat across from me, dressed sharp, acting confident, but her eyes told another story. Her lawyer started first, painting me as an aggressive ex-soldier who attacked innocent inspectors. His words were smooth but hollow. Then Cole stood, calm as ever. "Your Honor," he said, "let's review the evidence." Sarah's video played on the courtroom screen. The slap, the fake badges, the confrontation. The sound of the impact echoed through the silent room. The judge paused the footage halfway, staring at Karen. "These men were impersonating police officers," he said. "You hired them?" Karen stammered. "I didn't know they'd—" "Mrs. Ellis," the judge interrupted, "you funded a criminal act. Your lawsuit is dismissed, and you will be sanctioned for wasting this court's time." The gavel slammed. Cole wasn't done. "Your Honor, we're filing a counterclaim for assault, conspiracy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We request full restitution." The judge nodded. "Approved." Karen's face drained of color. Her lawyer whispered something, but she just shook her head, eyes wide. She knew it was over. The next morning, the story hit local news. HOA president accused of hiring fake cops to intimidate veteran family. The HOA board scrambled to distance themselves, holding an emergency meeting that ended with Karen's removal. Her so-called allies vanished overnight. The 3 imposters were charged with multiple felonies: assault, impersonating law enforcement, and conspiracy. The sheriff later told me, "You did the right thing, keeping your cool. Most people would have frozen a month later. The final ruling came through." Karen was found personally liable for damages, medical bills, emotional distress, and attorney fees. The HOA had to issue a formal apology, and new leadership was appointed under court supervision. When the settlement check arrived, Sarah and I didn't celebrate. We just sat on the porch, the same spot where this nightmare had started, and watched the sun go down. The garden she loved was blooming again. The dogs lay at our feet, calm and content. For the first time in weeks, the neighborhood felt quiet, peaceful. "Do you think she'll ever apologize?" Sarah asked softly. I smiled. "No. People like her don't apologize, but she'll think twice before crossing anyone again." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Guess your SEAL instincts still come in handy." "Didn't think I'd need them in a suburban HOA, I said with a laugh. She smiled. "At least now, everyone knows who we are. We don't scare easy. A sheriff's cruiser passed by, the deputy giving a friendly wave. I returned it, feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Gratitude. Not for revenge, but for justice. Karen Ellis built her power on fear, but fear only works until someone refuses to play by its rules. She thought she could break us, but all she did was expose herself. Sometimes defending your home isn't about fences, gates, or bylaws. It's about courage, about standing your ground when others hide behind titles and threats. And when people like Karen cross the line, justice doesn't always come quietly. Sometimes it comes from the very man they thought they could intimidate. That day, I learned something simple but powerful. Peace doesn't mean weakness. It means knowing exactly when to fight and when to let the truth do the rest. Because in the end, corruption may hide behind a badge, a title, or a boardroom vote. But it can't survive the light. And we made sure that light shined bright enough for the whole neighborhood to see.